Hello. Okay, I guess we wait. Okay, I guess we wait. Hello. Yeah, I got a little late today. I was supposed to start I think I was supposed to start about 20 minutes ago. And I had some work, so I'm starting now. Yeah, let's wait for a few more minutes and see if anyone else joins in. Otherwise, you are my audience of one. Hello. Yeah, so what I'm planning. Oh, perfect. Three, actually. Uh, yeah, so what I'm planning today is I want to cover some of the new features that are there in Octane. So, over the last, I think over the last year, they've been adding stuff at a fairly crazy pace. So what I primarily want to cover is I want to cover the new volume shader that they have. Well, not the volume shader, but the new, they added a new volume calculating method. So I'll cover that in a fairly basic way. And then 2019.1, they have added layered shaders. So I'll primarily cover that because that's basically what I was looking at. So just give me a second. Let me just open that. Yeah, so we'll primarily cover essentially this stuff. And then I also want to cover just one thing from 2019.2 because there are quite a few things in 2019.2. This is 2019.1. Okay, so I'll cover that to some level. I don't know if I'll cover all the features because I'm a little late anyways. It's like 10:15 in the night over here. Usually I start by 9:30. So should I get started? Yeah, I guess I can get started. Okay, so let's do one thing. Before we do this, let me open up the smoke file. Okay. So I'll just save this. Yeah, so if you are in the new version and if you open up Octane, you're getting this error. So effectively what's happened is that they have a new rounded edge shader now. So the older rounded edge shader that was inbuilt into the material itself is not there anymore. Now there's a separate map called rounded edges. So that's why this, it needs to be removed from the ready-made digital asset. That's not been removed, which is why you're getting this error. But it doesn't matter. It's just, I think eventually the developer will remove it, so those errors won't be seen anymore. Okay, so let me just change this for a second and come here. Yeah, okay. So with Octane 4, they changed the volume, like the way they would show volumes or the way they would calculate volumes. So effectively, the big difference was it picks up a lot more detail. Okay. So I'll just lower this a little bit. Yeah, so basically what I have is I have this, which is just a basic, volume that I have. Hello. And then I just did a couple of things with this, which is yeah, so I'm converting this to a VDB and then I'm doing a bit of a resample. Okay, and then I'm adding like a little bit of noise on top of it, so it just gets a little bit more detailed. Okay, now one of the issues that is probably happening here. Hello. I'm sort of starting, because I guess I'm a little late. Is this is an error that I kind of keep making all the time. Is that this is a VDB, okay, and if I look at my pyro import, it is essentially on volume. So if this is on volumes and inside you have a VDB, Octane takes time to sort of start your render. Okay, which is essentially like if I hit IPR right now, it'll take a little bit of time to calculate. Actually, it'll take a fair bit of time to calculate. Because what it's doing is trying to convert the VDB to volume and then it will start rendering. So it took a fair bit of time. So usually what you want to do is you want to come in here and then convert it back to a volume. So take a convert VDB and then just keep this to volume. Okay. So what you do is just, if you press IPR now, you'll see it. See, now it's a lot faster. Okay. So traditionally, even if you import a VDB into Houdini, convert it to volumes and then render it. So Octane will pick it up a lot faster. Okay. So I think like if I play it back, it should, yeah. Like if it's light enough, Octane can do a pretty fast update. Okay. So yeah, so let me just come in here someplace. And we'll try to build a brand new shader. So what I have is, you have your three basic grids. You have the absorption grid, the scattering grid, and the emission. Emission is usually kept to heat. It's usually kept to temperature. I like to keep it on heat. So I'm keeping it to heat. Okay, and then yes, I'll come into ShopNet and we'll create a new shader. So I'll just take an Octane network and we'll call it volume 2. Okay, and let's assign this. And then come in here and take a volume. Yeah, a medium volume and just plug it in. Okay. And then if we hit IPR, we should be able to, see that. Now the big problem is the default scattering color is kept to black. So that needs to be kept to white and you'll start, seeing something. And then the density is too high. Okay, that's one of the issues. So get the density low, so then you'll start seeing, something happening with the volume. Okay. Now the detail is primarily based on volume step length. So the lower it goes, the more detail it picks up. Don't go too low. Like if you're like I'm at 0.07, the lower it goes, the longer it takes to render. So what you want to do is you want to find a balance. Like where does it look good and it doesn't take too long to render, right? Like you kind of find your balance over there. So we'll keep it to around like 0.02, which should be fine enough for us at the moment. Yeah, or actually let's go a little higher. This one doesn't matter. Okay, and now just to sort of show you the difference, let's build up a decent enough shader first of all. So what you want to do is, in order to, light this up a little better, usually you want to work with like a volume ramp, like a volume gradient. Okay, so just take a volume ramp and plug it into absorption ramp. Now, with absorption ramp, you need to reverse the gradient. Okay, so this should be black and that should be white. Yeah, see, so there you go. So it immediately sort of lights up a lot better. And then the color is based on the density of your volume. Okay. And yeah, see, so this is like, you have your density base there. And then you can adjust the max value for it to sort of, move through the colors. So if I start to adjust density now, see, there you go. So now it can sort of pick up, better colors. Like let's try to put in another color here if we want. Yeah. Yeah, now you can make it brighter as well. Okay, so the absorption ramp is one thing, and then the other is the scattering ramp. So what you want to do is you take another volume ramp and plug it into scattering. Okay, and this will help you make it brighter. Okay, so if I start to lower this, you'll see that it can pick up, see, there you go. So if you want to make it lighter, you can pick up a lot more color. But yeah, you need to do like a combination of two. Okay. Of what you actually want here. Now another thing that you can do with this is that if you want the volume to be a little bit like you don't want this really wispy smoke on the edges, get in another node like color here and make it black. And what that does is it allows you to just see, you can cut out the area. So you can see like this. Like if I remove that, you'll get like a little bit of wispiness towards the edge. And then if you bring this in and make it black, you should be able to just sort of like eat up into it. See? So now your edges are a lot more harsh. Yeah, but then just sort of play around with it till it's bright enough. Yeah, there you go. So you can do these, this is a good way to do it. And then let me just lower the step length and increase the density. Yeah, so what I want to do is I just want to show you the difference between like the old volume calculation and the new volume calculation. Okay, so let this render a little bit. Okay, another thing that you can do now, which wasn't there before, is one of the problems is I'm lighting this up with an HDR. You traditionally don't want to light a volume with an HDR because it's like there's too much light. Usually you light it up with like, a couple of area lights or a couple of spotlights. That's good enough. So what you can do here is, so this is something that is additionally there now. Okay. So you have something called scatter depth, which was like before version 4, the volume depth was connected to the standard diffuse depth. So if your scene had to have 15 bounces, your volume would also have 15 bounces. So now what they've done is that your scatter depth is separate. Okay, so if you take the scatter depth to 0, see, so now even though my diffuse depth is 15, your scatter depth is still, only 1. So it will calculate faster. Or if I get the scatter depth up to like 4C, now, it has a lot more light. So traditionally 2 is good enough for volumes. Yeah, so hold on, where are we? Yeah, so I'll do a snapshot of this just to do a comparison between like the new method and the old method. Okay, so yeah, give it a second. Okay, so to go to the old method, just go to the base of your kernel and you'll find something called emulate old volume behavior. So if you turn it on, you'll see the difference. So the new is slightly more darker, but it picks up a lot more detail. Okay, the older one was slightly softer. Okay, so there you go. Like you can see how much detail it picks up here. So you can actually choose. Like sometimes you want the volume to be slightly softer, then you can go with the old behavior. And when you're doing like explosions and stuff, and you want it to be very detailed, then you can go with the with the newer method. Okay, so now that this is done, I'll turn this off. And if you want to do like fire, then what you want to do is just come in here and pick up an emission texture. Okay, and just plug it into emission. And it'll find the heat shader that you have, and you can just, pick it up whichever way you want. And then also take a volume ramp here as well. So just take a volume ramp and plug it in. And then, choose a color. So let's make this red. See, and then make this like yellow or something. And then again, just move through the, yeah, there you go. So you get your, yeah, and again, like you can bring this in to kind of control it. So if I make this black, and then you can just, like, if you just want it in very specific places, yeah, get it in more. There you go. Yeah, well, okay, here's another trick for, like volume rendering. So let me just change this. I'll bring in another, volume shader that I have, or another volume that I have, which is, where are you? Yeah, so it is just a simple cloud, like an explosion actually. Yeah, so let me just sort of play through this. Okay, and yeah, let me hit IPR. Yeah, so what you can do here, now this is again, like what you'll notice is that this is not as wispy. Like Octane tends to pick up a lot more, like you're getting like a lot of very fine volume here, which does not exist, or it's actually there, but we just can't see it. So if you don't want that, like if you want to match it exactly to this, then what you want to do is what we were doing before, but you couldn't see it properly, is, let me just come into ShopNet and take the scattering ramp and just bring in a second channel, like a second one here, and make it black. See, there you go. So that allows you to sort of block it off. See, so now it matches, that. Okay, so this is what you want to do. Okay, so when you have like, you want to precisely match this, this is what you want to do. Okay. Now, another thing is, this is a problem that happens with Octane, is that, as this goes towards the end, even though like our amount of volume, starts to reduce, the render time doesn't really go down. So let me just sort of show something here. This is actually an old tutorial that I've done anyways. Let me just see. Okay, so what you want to do is, let me just get rid of that. Yeah. So you can do this for like the absolute end of your, okay, give me a second. There's a plane flying outside. The problems of living next to an airport. Okay, so like if I do an IPR, so what happens is that even though you end up seeing, like as this goes by, and you're not seeing too much of volume, but it is still sort of, it still takes time to render it, because there's actually like still some amount of wispy, volume left over there. So if you want to see that, you can take a volume ramp here, and we should be able to see it. So what happens is that if I bring it in here, and if I start to increase or lower the source max, okay, hold on a second. Give me a second here. Okay, this is weird. Something should have happened by now. Oh, hold on a second. Density is what? No. Okay, density is number 5. Yeah, okay. You need to pick up the volume primitive. We're trying to modify density, and density was not at number 1. Okay, so what's happening is that if we start to look at this and we start, see, there you go. So even though like in the viewport you think you only have this much, in reality, like the amount of volume left is a fair bit. Like you can see, like it's actually like there's a ton of volume left in the viewport. Like, and if you want to see this, we can actually come into the shader, and if I get rid of that, see, there you go. That's what you still have left. Okay. So what you want to do is, in order to, not worry about this, because it's like the absolute end of your explosion, what you can do is you can animate this. So come towards, like, let's say if we come to frame, like 75, and we can do an alt click on source minimum, then come to about 100 and just, take it up. So what this will do is it will just delete everything. Okay, so what will happen is, like, it will actually physically get rid of, all the additional volume data. Okay, so if I try to reduce this, you'll see, like, there's nothing left anymore. Like there's only like that much left. Okay. And then you'll eventually get rid of the whole thing. Okay, see, so now like there's nothing left anymore. So what this does is it sort of optimizes your volume. Okay, so once you're at a point and you don't need it anymore, and then you'll see the rendering actually goes a lot faster. Like if I come till about 99, and because it's actually like eaten up the volume completely, the render happens in like a few seconds. See, so now it's not going to take as much time as it was taking before. So, or you can go higher, like just let it eat up the whole thing. It doesn't matter, like we can come in here and get it all the way to like 0.36. So if you come a little further, there'll be like nothing left. See, there's like, it just happens in a few seconds. Because what happens is you'll end up noticing that, even though you don't see too much volume in your viewport, it's still taking too long to render. Okay, like, so what is happening? So basically it's like the residual, stuff that is still there, that's what it is spending time on. Okay, so this is essentially, it wasn't supposed to be a volume shader tutorial, but yeah, that's how you build a volume shader. And then primarily how to optimize your volume. Okay, so let's look at, I'll save this, and let's look at some shaders. Okay, so one of the new things they have added in 2019.1, okay, is they've added layered shaders. Okay, and layered shaders are quite useful. Okay, so I'll just do a couple of examples of layered shaders. So I'll just make an Octane network, and let's do like a simple subsurface scatter. So I'll just assign this here, and we'll take a specular, and let's set IPR. Okay, so we have this. I might need to increase the number of bounces. Yeah, okay, so let's just take this, let's take both of these to about 9 and 9. Okay, and then let's convert this to subsurface scatter. So just take a medium scattering and connect it to medium, and we will adjust this, and let's give it some color, and we lower the density. Okay, now one of the things, if you're doing subsurface scatter, which is very important, is turn on fake shadows. There you go. Like if you don't have fake shadows on, it tries to brute force, like it's trying to calculate caustics and stuff, and that's always a bad thing. Okay, so make sure that when you're doing subsurface scatter, you turn on fake shadows. Now, because we're doing this through glass, and I usually do it through glass, you are getting a reflection. Okay, and also the subsurface scatter is based on the index of refraction, like the amount, not the amount, but like the quality of the subsurface scatter. So one of the things you also want to do is like you want to increase the roughness so it sort of, looks a little better. And I'll just take the HDR and rotate a little. So yeah, let me just spin it to an edge. Okay, this is good. Okay, so what I want to do is like firstly, naturally we have blurred it so we're not getting too much of a reflection anyways. And also like maybe you don't want the IOR at 1.45, okay, because the subsurface scatter will look different. Okay, so if I take the IOR to like 1.2 or 1.1, you'll see like the result will change. Are people still there? Or has like everyone left? Yeah, okay, so let me just do a snapshot here. Yeah, so you can see you can see the difference. Okay, like the higher your subsurface scatter, the more you can see, like it sort of picks up more detail, it also gets more shadowed. Okay, like you can see like this is flatter and then this is more sort of rounded. But then if you bring it down to 1, okay, I think I clicked on white balance. Give me a second. Okay. Yeah, I clicked on white balance. I've never really tried. Let me try baking. I haven't tried it, so I can't really talk about it. I don't bake too much, but their baking is supposed to be pretty decent. Like I haven't really heard any issues with it. Let me try it. I'll try it out and let you know. Okay, so let's bring this down to 1, and then then you can see the difference. I'll get the scattering down to 1. So now the issue comes up is like, okay, so now we are at 1, but now we don't have any reflections on it. Okay, and this is where layered shaders sort of come into play. Okay, so now with every material you get a layer input. Okay, and then if you click here and you'll find something called material layers. Okay, so you have like 4 or 5 of them actually. Actually you just have like, so yeah, you have diffuse, you have metallic, you have sheen and specular. Okay, so usually like a coating is called a specular layer. Okay, so if I just take a specular layer, and let's say if you want like 2 of them, so I can just come into material layers and pick up material layer group. Okay, so we'll take material layer group and connect it to layers, and then we can just plug in specular layer, and there you go, you have a specular. And just make sure you turn on thin layer because it's like that helps it go faster. And let's say, okay, so let's say we want like a dual reflection. Okay, like let's say you're trying to do skin, so I want like a blurred out reflection, and then I want like a shinier one. So I can increase the roughness here. So this is like your first level of reflection, and I don't know, let's, for fun, we'll just make it like reddish, or let's try pink. Okay, it looks stupid, but fine. Let's go with that. And okay, there you go. Okay. This is like the worst looking skin you can find, but. And then if you want like a secondary layer, I can just put in another specular layer. So I'll just take another one and plug that in. You can go up to 8 layers, okay, which is, I think, is more than enough. So yeah, so you can do fancy stuff like this now. It just makes things a lot easier, like what you couldn't do before. And then maybe this should be slightly brighter, so we'll just make it like, say, so yeah, so a whole range of stuff, or a whole range of materials that you couldn't do before is sort of possible now. Okay. So just to do like another example of this was, I have a few here, but let's just do something. Okay, so So let me just assign this. Yeah, so let's say if I have like a basic metal, okay, and then I want like, a certain amount of reflection. Like let's say you want like multiple anisotropic reflections just for the heck of it. Okay. So like what I had said last time, if you're doing anisotropic reflections, make sure that the BRDF is not kept on Octane, because Octane BRDF doesn't calculate anisotropic reflections. So just get anisotropy to around like 0.8, 0.9, and then we can just spin it around. And we can try to increase, like let's make this rough, like really rough like that. And let's try to do, we'll do a Gaussian color and just, yeah, let's make it slightly like gold or whatever. Okay, I think this should be fine. And then again, like I can just take a material layer and let's pick up another specular layer and like plug that in. See, so we have like a secondary layer of reflection. Let's do something. Let's make this blue. And let's make this anisotropic as well. Yeah, and let me do one thing. I'm going to change my HDR. So what is my, yeah, okay, give me a second. I'm going to change this to something which has more reflections. Yeah, there you go. See, so now you can see like, your 2 layers of reflections in there. Yeah, there you go. See, that's a lot better. So it might kind of seem, fancy, but you can find quite a few good usages of it. Okay. Okay, now let's take a look at something slightly different. So they also introduced OSL in version, actually they introduced OSL in like 3.08. And so it's been there for a while, but usually you don't know what to do with it. So I've been here's the fun thing, right? If you know a little bit of Vex, OSL isn't too different. Like you can sort of figure out what to do with it. Okay. So what I did was I kind of wrote a custom OSL map. Okay. And then I'm going to show you where you can actually use it. So what I did was, let me go, I'll go into Octane for this. Okay. I'll go into Octane standalone, because it's not like I can use it here, but it will be easier for me to show it at this place. Okay, so what I essentially have is it's a custom map for if you want to take like if you take an input texture and you convert it to Perlin noise. Okay, it's effectively that's what I'm doing, but it's not easy to explain it. So let me just show you what it actually does. Okay, so what can I use? Okay, hold on a second. So I'll open up something simple. Okay, so I'm going to take this one, and what I have here is I actually have like a wood shader. So I'm going to show you how I made this wood shader. Okay. So what I effectively have is if I just remove everything, I'll be able to show you the map that I have. Okay. So firstly, I just have a simple gradient input, which is just a black and white gradient. Let me get rid of the specular altogether. Okay. So what I have is just this gradient, just a black and white gradient. Now, what the noise map does, okay, this is my noise map, which effectively has just 3 parameters. It has a basic offset value, it has a multiply value, and then it has a hue value if there is color. So you can sort of shift the hue, but we don't want that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'll just load it up. So you can come into textures and take OSL texture, and I'm going to try and load up my map. Okay. So yeah, so this is basically what I have. So you take the input, and then if I plug it out, what you'll see initially is not much. Okay, but if I increase the multiply value to say about 20, there you go. So it takes any input and generates a noise based on that. Okay, now what it needs is, it's usually very, like, there isn't enough contrast in it, so I usually put it through like a color correction. Okay, so I'll just take like a color correction and plug this in, and I usually just increase the contrast. So now if I take this texture and make it, let's say 80, so there you go. Okay, and this is where it becomes fun. So if you can do an offset, so you can actually like move it left and right. Okay, and then I can just take a simple gradient and give it colors. So I can just take a texture gradient and I can just, let's say I'll just give it like basic wood colors, just 2 colors for now. You can take as many, but for now we'll just take 2. Okay, so this is basic. So how do you convert this to wood? Okay, is fairly simple. So what I did was, you can add a little bit of noise texture to it. Okay, so if I take, let's say I just take like an add, okay, and yeah, okay, so let's just take a simple add, and we'll take a noise texture and we'll just add it together, and there you go. Okay. Now that's a little too much. So what you can do is, you just sort of lower the gamma of your noise, so it sort of fades out, and there you go. So you can effectively, like, build up your own wood texture, and you can kind of adjust the gamma to just sort of push it around. But let's say if I take it if I take it up to about 200, there you go. Yeah, see, so now you have wood. So this is, the map is fairly useful. I'll make this available for download. Hi David. I'll make this available for download with this. I'll put in like a Dropbox link so you can, you can use it. I'll show you a couple more usages of it. Okay. So this is the map that I was using, and today I was making that CD shader. So I realized like it's really useful for this. So I'll show you where you can use this, with this particular thing. But while I'm here within, this is 2019.2, okay, which is in like very early beta. So I want to just show you one thing from it. Okay, I'm not going to, like, it has quite a few new things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we'll do like one thing from it. Okay, which is something that I really like. So they are introducing a new set of lights. Okay, and so if you come, like, if you check it here, it has a new quad light and a sphere light. The volumetric spotlight is not really very useful, but yeah. Now these two things are really, really fast. Okay, and that's essentially what I wanted to show. So just to sort of do a difference between the two is, I'm going to start off with like, so this is the quad light and this is just a basic plane. And I'm going to plug in the basic plane and we'll do a render. Okay, hold on a second. Oh, sorry, just a sec. Okay, this is weird. Give me 1 minute. Let me just correct this. Okay, yeah, so this is the old light. This is, so here's the thing, right? So Octane doesn't really have lights. Okay, what Octane has is a light shader. Okay, so if you used Corona, then Corona also initially used to just have a light shader. Okay, and it's pretty fast with light shaders, right? Like, because that's the only way it lights up. Octane is actually pretty fast with those things. So if I just come into the kernel and I reduce the number of samples to say 20, okay, and I'll get the diffuse depth to like 1. Let me close this. Yeah, so you can see like this is fairly noisy. Okay, like if I bring this down to like 10 and do a slight rotation, you'll see like this is relatively noisy. So let's compare this to the new light, and if you plug that in and, oh sorry, wrong thing. Yeah, there you go. So you can see there, like it is the same number of samples. So this is 10 samples with a geometry light. Okay, like the older light shader. This is not a new light shader. It's just what they're doing is instead of sampling geometry, they're sampling like an SDF. Okay, so the Vectron stuff that they've been talking about, this is essentially a light made out of, sign distance fields. Or actually it's made out of, what is it? There's a term for it. Raycasting? No. Yeah, something like it's sort of like, just math based geometry. So this is with geometry and this is with like, SDF stuff. Now on quads, it's not like you can't make out that much of a difference, but with actual geometry, like with a sphere, you can make out a lot more. Okay, so this is with a sphere. You can see how noisy it is. And then this is with the new one. Yes, ray marching. So what they're doing is they're, instead of using polygonal data for casting light, they're actually using like ray marched geometry, and apparently it samples a lot better. And you're about to see how much better. So if you click that in, and what in the hell? Okay, sorry, wrong thing. There you go. See, so this is with, polygons, and this is ray march stuff. It's like magic. Okay. And like the place where it starts to make a difference, you'll see like, okay, in shadows it's still noisy. But then once you have enough samples, even then the difference becomes a lot huge, because now it only needs to worry about like this area. Okay, like earlier it had to sample through like, all of this. So if I take the number of kernels to say like 100, and you'll see like even with 100 samples, it's still fairly noisy. Okay, because what used to happen is that every polygon would be a light. Okay, so the more, if you want the sphere to get smoother, it would automatically, you're increasing the number of lights. But now with this, you can see like it gets way more cleaner than what it was before. Okay, so this is the one thing I wanted to show. Okay. It looks like a relatively smaller feature, but in the long run, it could save a lot of rendering time. Because this is not adaptive lights, right? Adaptive lights is usually for like a lot of lights. This is essentially just better sampling. So I think if they can make, like a torus and a tube light or whatever, it will be much better. Okay, so that's essentially it. But let me talk about where can you, like that noise shader that I had, I want to use it somewhere. So I made a CD shader today morning. Okay, and I was pretty happy with it. So this shader is literally impossible without the new layered shaders. Okay, because you can't do it. Okay, because the problem that happens with the CD is that the specular sort of breaks up, like the specular itself breaks up in like RGB. Okay, actually it breaks up into more colors than that, but yeah, traditionally like that's what it does. And there's no real way to do it unless you just layer up like multiple colored speculars. So let's just take a look at how to do a CD. Okay, and maybe that's the last thing we'll do. So I'm going to turn off both of these and we'll turn on CD. Like it's a fairly simple geometry, and I'm going to make a new shader. So I'm going to take Octane network and let's drop that in. We'll just start off with a simple diffuse because I don't really want anything else. Or actually, let's do one thing. Let's just take a glossy. So first of all, I'll just show you how to make because even if you don't want to do a CD, right? Let's say if you want to do like brushed metal, or you want to do like, you know, utensils like that, this is still useful for those things. So let me hit an IPR. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so how do you do, you know, basic brushed metal? So let me show you the maps that I have first of all. Okay, so what I have is, if I just take a texture image grayscale and plug it in there, and I have a map called circle, which is essentially just a circular gradient, like going from the center out. And then I have another one called radial, which is like this. I made them both in Photoshop. Okay, so this is like, I had a normal one which was like that, but then I just mirrored, you know, like start and end point is the same and middle is white. So this is better. Okay, so the question is, how do you use these to make uh, a brushed metal shader? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to make this 0, and let's make this metallic. So I'm going to take index of refraction down to 1. So we have that. So what you want to do first of all is, again, keep this to ggx, and let's get the anisotropy to 1, and get the, actually don't get it to 1, get it about like 0.7 or 0.8. Okay, and then we're going to take this guy, okay, this diffuse shader that we had, this radial, yeah, okay, and I'm going to put it through a gradient and plug it into input and go into rotation. So you'll get, see, you can start seeing something. Okay, and then what you want to do is keep the start and end to white, and then add, like, let's say 3 points in the middle, and this goes to black. See, there you go. And then this also goes to black. See, so you'll get something. Now the problem is, you're still not getting enough. So what you want to do is, you want to take the roughness all the way up to around 0.8, 0.9, and there you go. You have brush metal. Now the problem is, again, that what if you don't want to build this gradient, or you want, like, you know, more points or whatever? You're seeing a lot of them because my HDR is like that. So let me just modify the HDR to something lesser. Yeah, okay, I think this is better. So the noise shader that I use, this is where it's kind of useful. Okay, so what I can do is, just to show you what it's going to do. Okay, so I can take a diffuse shader, and I'm going to bring in that map. So I can take a texture OSL and load up, did I load it up before? Yeah, noisy. So when you load it up, you just have to hit compile and build, and it will build up the whole thing. And if I plug this in here into in, and I'll take a color correction. So let me just take a color correction and plug it into diffuse, and hold on. Okay, and increase your contrast a little bit. See, so now here is the fun thing, right? So if I take this, and let's say if I make it about 6, there you go. Okay, and as you go higher, you can get more and more lines. And what you can do here is, you can adjust the gamma. Okay, and so if I use, so instead of making a gradient, I can just use this directly. Okay, this is where it, so you don't need to make a custom gradient. Okay, you can just, you know, build it this way. So if I take this and plug into rotation, see, and what you can also do is, like, let's keep it to about 4, but here's where it becomes interesting. So firstly, you can adjust the gamma to sort of, like, you know, control where it should be, and then we can take the offset and sort of move it around. See, so if I want to move it around, and it can go over 1, so it's not limited to 1. See, so you can actually, like, move it around like that, and maybe lower the contrast a little bit, or say, you know, like, increase the contrast, whichever way you want to. So you don't have to go in and manually build a gradient, like, you know, this is useful. Okay, and let's say what you want is you want those circular grooves. So we can use the same map again. And what I can do is I can take, like, let me just duplicate all of this. So do Control Z, Control V. And we want like grooves into like, well, here's the thing, right? Mantra is going to get replaced soon enough with Karma. So we might as well just wait till 18 comes out and then work with Karma. I think that will make more sense. Okay. So let me just change this to circle. And if I plug this into bump, you should be able to see something interesting. Okay, let me just disconnect this temporarily and increase your multiplication to about, say, 80. And there you go. And we can just lower the contrast and adjust the gamma. And then just sort of like, lower the brightness, because that's like your bump amount. So we can just lower it down a little bit like that. Maybe take it a little higher. So make it about 160. Yeah. And again, like offset it if you want to. Let's try slightly lower. Yeah, okay. And then if we plug this both in together, and there you go. So you have a perfectly nice looking. So I'll make the texture available, because it's like you can do it manually as well. Just take a gradient and you can try doing it that way. But this just makes it a little more procedural. So if I make it say 200, yeah, I think 200 is better. Or let's try to go higher. Let's try to go 300. Yeah. And then just sort of adjust the bump amount to what you want. We can also, let's try something. Let's try to plug it into roughness as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do like a Control C, Control V. And let's plug it into roughness. Whoa, okay. This is a bad idea. Oh yeah, okay, keep it to 1 and then we'll just adjust the gamma a little bit. Yeah, this isn't bad. There you go. What if we don't have the bump? Yeah, there you go. So even without the bump, if you just go into roughness, it still looks nice. So yeah, so the more grooves you want, you just increase the multiplication, and we can just like move it around, so we can just sort of adjust it. Yeah, let's try to go to about like 600. Yeah, see, so there, now it's like really, really fine. So yeah, a little bit of OSL is quite useful. Like I don't know a lot of it, but this is good enough to, build some shaders with it. Okay. Okay, so just to sort of, do a walkthrough of the CD shader that I have, that's essentially a little bit complicated, or that's actually a lot complicated. So this is essentially the CD that I'm building. So what's happening is you're essentially doing 3 layers of this, right? So you do like a red, green, blue, and then you just offset it slightly. So it gives you like 3 separate layers. Okay. So just to sort of show it here, yeah, let me just sort of bring this up. And yeah, so let's say if I take like a material layer, layer group. And then we can take a specular just to show it with like 2 of them. Okay. And then I'll do the same thing. So increase roughness, increase anisotropy. And then I can just do like a Control C, Control V and bring it in to rotation. Yeah. And what you want to do is, let's say if I make it red. Let me do one thing. I'm going to get rid of this. Yeah, okay. So we have red. Okay. I'm getting rid of the original specular altogether. Okay. And let me just take this a lot higher. Comparisons are tricky. Like, what do I compare? The Redshift is the fastest among all of them. But then what else are you comparing? Okay, so this is layer 1. And then I'll do Control C, Control V. And then we'll pick up like layer 2 and pick up layer. Yeah, okay, hold on a second. Yeah, just add one more layer. Okay. And so this will be green. Yeah, and then this will be blue. So it'll effectively just go back to white. But what you want to do is you want to come into the OSL that I have and just offset it slightly. See, so as it offsets, you'll see the secondary color come in. Okay, so take one into positive and then take another one and slightly into negative, and there you go. That's how you make a shader for a CD. So it's a little tricky, but yeah, it's effectively just you take 3 layers and then you offset them. Okay, so RGB and then you offset the whole thing. So yeah, as I said, like, what do you compare? Okay, like, are you just comparing speed? Redshift will win. But it depends on what you're trying to compare. You know, like, if you're doing volumes, the Redshift volume shader is decent, but it's not very flexible. Mantra has a great volume shader. If you're trying to compare hair, then V-Ray has a great hair shader. Octane has introduced a new hair shader, which is really good. Redshift isn't bad. Okay. So yeah, it kind of varies from, you know, what you want to do. Like Octane has certain issues, right? So Octane displacement and motion blur is an issue which they're trying to solve. I think it's almost done, but it still like has issues with displacement and motion blur, which can be a big problem for a lot of people. Damn it, stupid planes. Oh, that actually looks pretty nice. I like this. Yeah, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like most versatile without sacrificing speed. It doesn't work. Okay. Stability hasn't been an issue for me too much, but my requirements aren't too high. You know, like I've never really done like a super heavy scene with Octane because I don't make super heavy scenes. Like the rocket ship one that I did worked fairly well. You know, like that is a fairly heavy scene, but I didn't really have any issues with it. Like I've mostly been lucky. Yeah, like I've heard like Octane can be very unstable at times, but I haven't faced the issues personally. So I don't know what to do to improve things. That's the problem. Like if I was facing problems, I would know like, okay, you know, these are the problems and this is what I need to correct. But yeah, I haven't really faced too many issues myself. But then again, as I said, like I don't do a lot of very heavy volumes or fluids and, you know, like lots of particles, lots of motion blur. I don't do stuff like that. So for people who do, I'm very sure like they have faced issues with it. But yeah, I don't. So for what I do, it works. Like I think like they are trying to improve it a lot more. But I think Octane is great for like concept artwork. Who do I know who does heavy stuff? Most people other than me. Most Houdini users are more VFX oriented. Okay, I am not very VFX oriented, so I don't do like I mostly do a lot of, you know, SOP level stuff. But let me check. Let me see if, because a lot of them who used to use Octane are now using Redshift. So there's also that. So it's like, oh, okay, who do I find? But yeah, again, like, let me just try and find overall. Okay. I have no idea why they want to fly at night. Okay. God. Okay, I think that's basically it. This is all I had prepared for now. I am planning to do a Redshift for, if you can hear me. I am planning to do a Redshift live stream, hopefully on Friday. Okay. Or if I can't make it by Friday, then I'll do it like early next week. So maybe like a Monday or a Tuesday. But I'll try to do it this week. Okay. I'm just sort of doing some of my work for the new training series, but I have a little bit of free time. So I wanted to, like, I'm like, okay, since I'm doing so many live streams, I'll try to cover, Redshift as well. Like, why not? So I'll do that next. And if anybody has like any other questions regarding Octane, you can ask me. Okay. I'll try to show a few more things with Octane. Like, there is a decent bit of stuff. Like, I'll cover hair and particles next, just to show you how to use attributes, because there's a slight workaround. It doesn't directly support attributes as yet. It's still in the works. So yeah, so one of the reasons why people don't use Octane is also, like, especially Octane for Houdini, is because of attribute support. So there's like attribute support for polygons, but you don't have it for particles and hair as yet. So that's an issue that needs to be worked out. So there are things that are still being worked out. As I said, like, I don't have very heavy requirements, so it kind of works for me. All right, that's basically it. I hope this was useful. I managed to cover a few things. I'll attach, is anyone interested in the noise map? Like the OSL noise map that I have. Yeah, so if anyone is interested, I'll put a Dropbox link and you can try it out. It's not like I think it's relatively useful. Like, you can do some fancy things with it. But yeah, so somebody had asked me last time if I could cover volumes. So I figured, hey, okay, volumes, like, why not? So yeah, so that's basically it. So hopefully Friday, and I'll do Redshift. Okay. And that's it. Good night.